Good evening, and welcome to our City Council work session this June the 24th of 2024. I'm going to have Mr. Kenneth Reeves, our council person, do our invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for the opportunity to serve our citizens, and we ask that you give us wisdom and help us to understand what we need to do, Father. And always, we thank you for your Son that died on that cross and saved our souls. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
If you would, please stand with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Okay, I need we have your agenda in front of us. I need a motion to set the agenda. Ms. Harris and Mr. Craig, all in favor? Motion passes. We have 3 items on our consent agenda. If there are any changes, hearing none, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Mr. Meadows and second by Mr. Reeves, all in favor? Motion passes. Okay, our first presentation is going to be from the YMCA Municipal Partnership, Sharon Paget and Mary Moffitt. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and excited to be back here again today. Thank you, Jonathan. I brought that up just in case. So, yeah. Wanted to say thank you for having us for the second time. We're excited to be here. My name is Sharon Paget. Serve as the CEO of the Gaston County Family YMCA.
And I'm Mary Moffitt, and I serve as the VP of Membership for Gaston County and the Executive Director at Stowe Family YMCA.
Yep. And so we are here tonight to, first of all, say thank you for what we had discussed last time, which was the Soul Patrol, and the YMCA partnership seems to be going well. We will start it officially July 1. And we do have some members who are already attending, and so we're just bringing them in. We have, Mary, I'll let you speak to what we have this week.
Oh, because there's bingo tomorrow at your location, and we have 13 of our members at the YMCA already signed up and registered, and I think you're going to have even more tomorrow. So
That's going well. We're very excited.
Okay.
But also wanted to mention that, do I need to stand here? Is there a camera?
There's a mic, so that would be good.
Okay, good. Yeah. I'm like Jonathan. I don't know that I need a mic, but I wanted to mention last time I was here, we briefly talked about the partnership from a Parks and Rec standpoint in a gym facility. And so we have done a little more due diligence, Mary and I and our team, and have a space at our new construction site, which is the renovation and expansion at the Stowe YMCA, where we feel a full-size gymnasium would fit beautifully on the property. And we are well aware that several years ago, there was a vote to really beef up Parks and Rec for this community. It did not get voted through. And I want to say that, not that I'm glad that didn't happen, but I think partnerships and seeing the opportunity for us to come together is a real plus here. And so with that, I have a 900 slide, just kidding, 45 slide presentation that I will not go through at all in detail, but I do want to mention a couple things. First of all, there are 3 things that I see, broad 30,000 foot view here, that I think will be successful if we look to partner together in the future. One is that our goals align beautifully, and that is leveraging healthy living, youth development, and social responsibility. That really marries well with the city and the YMCA. And if we collaborate, we can leverage our unique assets. It allows municipalities to offer best-in-class facilities. And here's the thing, without the burden of focusing and funding all areas of operations. So that's one of the 3 things. The second one is collaboration. and that is that we share in development cost, a shared annual operating expenses, leveraged expertise in operations and program delivery. And then the third thing, just a quick synopsis, win-win. If you look to the end of this, 4 years, 5 years out, it would be a win-win. And that's because our partnership, even with Soul Patrol, is already working. And we are happy to be on board. It is less cost than the original plan. And the community of Mount Holly has an added gym with many, many benefits that will come with it. And so I want to show you, oh, that goes fast, a couple of things here that we have 2,700 YMCA-Ys across the country, and 10% of them are undergoing major capital improvements and redevelopment. 48 of these new centers delivered to communities each year, and these facilities serve as centers of community that are accommodating a rich and diverse roster of programs and services for all. And here are just, I would say, 10 to 15 of these YMCAs across the U.S. and Canada who are already partnering with municipalities today. And I could say every single one of these pictures is a different scenario because every city and every Y will operate differently. There might be one piece in here that may not work for us, but there might be one piece somewhere else that would work for us. And so I would say that as we continue, hopefully, having conversations moving forward, that we can get to the win-win. We could get to the yes, to where we could partner together and provide the community a beautiful facility right here in Mount Holly. And I'm going to leave it there for questions. Mary, any thoughts? Add?
Council, any questions?
I'm excited.
Yeah. I think it can be a really good partnership. So it's, we're just, Mr. Meadows?
Well, I was gonna say, so the bingo has already started with the Soul Patrol, and that's going good?
Right here.
Microphone, yeah. So tomorrow is the first bingo
Okay.
that the Y members are coming over to your location.
Okay.
So we're starting out slowly to kind of just get them used to each other, the Soul Patrol and the Y members. And so we're coming up with creative ways to how to do that. We have field trips every month, and even more than that, once or twice a month. And you had a few people from Soul Patrol join us this past month.
Oh.
On that. So we want to encourage that. We want to encourage Soul Patrol coming over to the Y. We can also provide transportation for that through our busing. We've started to talk about that. So it's going really well so far. It's going to take a little bit to convince both sides, but it's working well.
Good.
Yeah, sometimes people get stuck in
Yes.
their comfort zone. They don't want to go out of that, so.
Right.
But yeah, it's, you guys went antiquing, is that what you did?
Yeah, they did.
Okay. all right.
Yep.
Anything, Mr. Meadows?
I was just curious, what are the next steps and what are the timeline looking like? I mean, obviously, they're not gonna do this for free, and we gotta have some kind of an agreement.
Sure,
How-
sure.
What does that look like?
So we have to continue the conversation. Right now, on the building side of it, we're gonna break ground in September for the current, we're expanding building about 16,000 square feet of new facility, and that does include a half gym on there, which we would continue to do as well. And so that, and the pool, the 6-lane outdoor water park is included in that first phase, which should be open by next Memorial Day. So now's the time to have that conversation while we have Behringer as our GC and RBA are our architects. And we've already picked that spot that the new gymnasium could go, and they are aware of that. So we've already kind of started that in motion. So it's kind of up to what are our next steps and when.
So I think if, we could get with staff and you guys could get together and get some numbers from your general contractor and kind of move forward from there. Mr. Blanton?
Sure. I believe the numbers we were looking at was a little over 2 million. Is that right?
About 2.4 right now. They gave us an estimate for a full-size gymnasium
That would be in addition to what you're doing now.
in addition to what we're doing currently.
So your campaign is what, 13 million?
13.5,
0.5, okay.
and we've already raised 12.4. We're pretty proud of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, you should-
I
and you
would
should
be.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, I guess we'll just, we'll get with staff and we'll, get together and talk with things and get some numbers together, and we'll just go from there. We'll just keep moving forward.
That'd be
Right.
great, yeah.
Thank you so much, ladies,
you
for
very
being
much.
here.
for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have our public hearing, for a proposed text amendment to amend section 6.4, table of permitted uses, businesses, professional and personal service to allow contractors, facilities with open storage to be permitted in the H1 zoning district while amending section 7.1 to add additional buffer standards for future contractors' facilities in the B3 district, case number TA 24-3. Mr. Lowe.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So as you know, this case was tabled by the Plan Commission and the City Council in May over concerns raised by the Plan Commission over how the text amendment was originally written, that it could potentially or have some impacts on future businesses or current businesses. So staff heard that feedback. We reworked the application, and that's why it's back before you this evening. So with our current updates, if it's approved, then contractors with open storage would be allowed use in the HI district by right, and then in the B3 district with special conditions. And the special conditions are just screening. So that's screening of fencing and vegetative buffer, and that would be required when it's joining or abutting residentially zoned property or residential uses of property, or if they're in major thoroughfares, and we're defining major thoroughfares or intersections via the MPO's or CTP map, So that would be thoroughfares, expressways, and proposed facilities. So, and then staff presented the updated case in front of the Planning Commission on June 3rd. They recommended approval. Staff recommends approval. I can answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Okay, we need to go into our public hearing. I need someone to, a motion to go in our public hearing. Mr. Meadows, second by Ms. Harris. All in favor? We are in our public hearing right now. We have no one to speak. I need a motion to go out. Mr. Meadows, second by Mr. Reeves. All in favor? So we're back into our regular meeting. Do I have Mr. Meadows?
Move approval.
Mr. Meadows makes a motion, second by Ms. Harris. All in favor? It is unanimous, so it passes. Thank you, Mr. Lowe.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Old business, Mr. Greg Beal, follow-up discussion of Belmont Mount Holly Road rezoning and neighborhood services program from the council retreat.
Hey. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. If you recall, I think it was March 1st, Friday, March 1st, we had the council retreat, and it was late in the day. It was close to 5. These were 2 items that were presented. Didn't get a lot of feedback during that time, but you asked that it be brought back to a work session. So here's what we're doing. A lot of language. Bottom line, the city's allowed to rezone property. That's essentially conventional, conditional, and we've done all this essentially in the past. So we want to look at the particular 2020 land use plan, general statutes, 160D, which consolidated a lot of the land use laws, requires all local governments to have a comprehensive land use plan. So we began ours in April 2019. The last one was nearly 20 years before that, and it was very outdated. It was before 485, before a lot of things happened in Mount Holly. And essentially, there were 10 citizen stakeholders that served on the steering committee. Numerous public meetings and workshops were had. There were 2 focus areas selected really by the steering committee based on public feedback. One was the North Gateway Center, which is really going to involve annexation because you got conservation land, and then you got the land around the broadleaf area of Lucia River Bend. But the other one was in town, was the Catawba Heights area. So 2 concepts were presented. Really, the feedback that we heard, even though they're very similar, 3.19, 3.10 as far as the star rating, was really to focus on more of a, you know, housing mix, but mainly a commercial corridor along Belmont Mount Holly Road. You see on 273 as well. It's a 300-acre site. These were done by MetroQuest surveys and presented to the public and scored. So and basically, you know, this area, involuntary annexation, 1989, you know, and it's before the county even had zoning. Gaston County didn't have zoning until 92. And when the city annexed it in 1996, a new zoning ordinance was adopted. But the strength of that is you're getting growth along the 85-273 corridor, but you still want to respect, you know, the older neighborhood, right? And so the feedback, the only real feedback when we presented this as a retreat, council was more interested, it seemed, in creating commercial opportunities along Belmont Mount Holly Road and continue those commercial corridors into downtown. We have a lot of residential zoning. In fact, when I started in 2001, most of the South Gateway was zoned residential. And it just did not make a lot of sense. A lot of planning was put in place in 2006, and you're seeing the fruits of all that work today with very high-paying jobs in the medical field. That takes the burdens off our residential, our citizens, when you have more commercial development. So basically, this 300-acre study area, I'll break it down this way by the zoning map. You see this Fights Creek right here on the thing. That was what the boundary was for the Catawba Heights annexation. And south of that, you have a Belmont address for a lot of those properties. Because the post office in Mount Holly could not serve that, Belmont Post Office served it. There's an identity there as well. You know, people think this is in Belmont. It's in Mount Holly all the way to I-85. But you got a lot of 12,000 or a little over quarter-acre lots in this area. And you see the red is commercial, but you see a lot of residential along the main thoroughfares. So the goal in the plan was to respect the neighborhood and not to go and rezone it to something incompatible. You would definitely want to look at maybe neighborhood business opportunities in that area and perhaps not rezoning single-family areas to multifamily throughout. Those projects, you know, we're dealing with one right now beside Catawba Heights Elementary School that's going to add some density if it's approved through annexation. That developer has been very good to work with. The adopted concept plan found in the Plan Mount Holly, the comprehensive land use plan, sees numerous residential zoning areas along the major thoroughfares, like I said. We're starting to see more interest in rezoning land along that corridor, but if it's a wait and see, it's going to be a very piecemeal approach. That's always a concern. You know, going back to the 2008 strategic vision plan, which was born out of the 2003 vision process, there was a recommendation to establish new zoning districts in the South Gateway and Downtown Gateway. City didn't do a good job in our opinion, and I say Mr. Jackson and I's opinion at the time, because it was more of like, this is what we're going to do, and there was not a lot of public feedback opportunities. So people were really concerned living in these areas about the lack of communication that, you know, our predecessors had presented. It was almost the arrogance of the city. They did not want their property tax raised, that their home was rezoned to commercial. They did not want to be forced out. And so transparency, public outreach, education were the three key points. And taking that, they pretty much got booed out of the room. But then we came back, met with folks. And for the downtown gateway, you had the traditional downtown. This is our downtown gateway with our traditional downtown overlay district. This is the South Gateway area. I-85, 273 up to Henry Street. You know, sorry, it was a good process. Once we came back, it allowed for people, we had communication with our tax department at Gaston County not to raise people's taxes because they were still planning on living in their homes. We looked at allowing existing single-family homes to be conforming, meaning they could expand, people could live in them perpetually, forever and ever. If they changed it to commercial, they had an opportunity to do so, sell it to a developer or whatnot, and many did, you know, both across the street and in the South Gateway. Got quite a bit of support. We had the room full of people that were upset, and then by the time it was adopted in 2008, a lot of people came out and said, you know, this is a good plan. Kind of similar process for Belmont Mount Holly Road, the Catawba Heights area. We would want to study that. We would want to have public input meetings. Typically looking at a block back has always been the recommendation, and not to go back into existing neighborhoods for commercial. Because people still want to enjoy peace and quiet at their home. And so being respectful of that, I think, is a good first step. But, you know, we don't have a plan in place now. We would have to analyze every property in that district. We've done some preliminary work in-house. But we have some good infrastructure in place with the Belmont Mount Holly Sidewalk project, and some of these businesses are selling. Other residential properties have been rezoned. And we have the project next to the Catawba Heights Fire Station that hopefully will get underway soon. It's a more of a multi-tenant building that's been lacking. You got, of course, Bob Patel's car wash that is going vertical now. That's a several $million investment. So those high architectural standards will go along with that. We've adopted them citywide in October 2010. So they've been the standard for quite a while. But just wanted to this was information from the retreat to gain any additional feedback that council members may have. So as staff looks at that, we're on the right track, and we could bring this forward at a later date. But the goal throughout the plan is to create a commercial corridor through the city where restaurants, where doctors' offices, where the like can be located without having to go through what can sometimes be a difficult rezoning process and a piecemeal approach.
All right. Any questions from council? Mr. Meadows?
So I just want to make sure I understand something that you said, to make sure that before we put an additional burden financially on somebody, because generally speaking, when you change the zoning of a property, it increases its value.
Yeah.
You had success the last time we did this at changing the zoning and didn't have an impact on the value until the use changed. Did I understand that properly?
That's correct, Councilman Meadows. And of course, we just, council sets the tax rate, the county assesses the value of property, but it was outreach with the county, and the use did not change. It was still residential, so the county did not jack people's taxes up for commercial use.
Mr. Meadows?
I would say generally, given the growth that we're experiencing, as long as you have the same kinds of overlay guidance that we do in the other areas that we have overlays. So I don't know if you're looking at just a commercial corridor, or you're looking at an overlay for that corridor, because we could certainly use more commercial property based on what we've seen come before us. Folks can't find places to go.
Yeah.
You know, they want to come to Mount Holly, but there's not a lot available as far as vacancy or even buildings that are suitable to move into.
And that may be, now that we see, when we created the South Gateway corridor and the Downtown Gateway, we did not have higher architectural standards, so we had to create an overlay and restrict the use and raise the architectural standards. But since they're citywide now, it's really looking at the zoning district that would be appropriate. So you could do a variety of approaches. You could say, we want to have everything B2, be neighborhood business, or you could create an overlay to restrict certain uses that may not be very attractive uses.
Mr. Meadows?
I think we've had a lot of success, and I always use the Bojangles, in that, you know, when I tell people drive-throughs are not allowed there, they go, they have one. I'm like, well, but there was a trade. You know, so the skin on that building and the way that that building presents is that way because you had the ability to apply a bit of pressure on the developer and get something that, if that doesn't happen to be a Bojangles in the future, it'll still be a good-looking building over time. So I think having that ability to trade somewhat and have a certain feel and use. I traveled a good bit in Florida as an example, and you could tell the places that had a sign ordinance and the places that didn't. So Same thing here, you can tell when you have some design standards and you require, all you gotta do is go look at Dollar Generals or any of the auto parts stores. You can tell the ones that have architectural standards, and sometimes you can tell by the building when they came in, because of the way they present.
Yes.
They'll tell you, I want to put up a metal building, but if you ask for brick, suddenly brick goes up.
Yes. And we have colleagues from other towns that are saying, how did you get a Dollar General to build a Dollar General like that? Because we have standards. Same thing with the Bojangles. So,
Anything else for Mr. Beal? That was mainly for discussion.
Yeah.
All
So,
right.
yeah, we'll start working on a plan, you know, a commercial corridor plan, and then, you know, and proceed from there. Of course, this would require public hearings, and public would be involved. This is not intended to be, this is intended to be a fully transparent process, you know, so. Next thing is neighborhood services was the second piece. We combined both of these into one presentation, but, you know, this was a retreat topic, and we looked at, we're not considering neighborhoods who have established HOAs. Now, people have different opinions on HOAs and whatnot, but in Mount Holly, they have served as a form of protection for the property owners in that particular community. If someone's grass gets too high, they usually send a letter before we even receive a complaint. So in a code enforcement world, we operate on a complaint basis because the staffing involved, and we do thank council for providing that additional staff member, because there's hundreds of code enforcement cases and permits that have to be issued annually. So these are older areas in town, and they do not have the benefit of an HOA. And there's people that, you know, for whatever reason, collect junk cars that you know, are parked on the front yard. The grass is 3 feet high, and various other violations that we have in our city code. So the case study in this would be the River Street Park area. So River Street Park area, this map is from the Community Development Block Grant. The city applied and received a $1 million Community Development Block Grant in 2010. And, you know, this area had to qualify as a low to moderate income area. There was a lot of street improvements, sidewalk improvements, infrastructure. $250,000 went into River Street Park, paved the parking lot, added new facilities. It certainly benefited the whole area. Now, these folks had to live in that home for 8 years because there was a lien placed on their improved home. And many of these homes were failing, so on and so forth. But that was something the city initiated, and then the state really cut back on these grants. May 2019, we had almost a town hall forum at Wesley Chapel Holiness, and that was Charles McCorkle was a council member, and he was key into you know, their targeted code enforcement is concerned. If you're picking on one area, you want to be invited in. And so I think the purpose of this meeting was that folks were sick and tired of junk cars, high grass, absentee landowners. We're dealing with a lot of absentee landowners in the area. And so the citizens, I think there were about 50 that attended that meeting. Mr. Jackson was city manager at the time. They asked for the city to come out. And so we partnered with other, it wasn't all just nasty letters. It was the dumpster in the neighborhood, free dumpster day, free bulk item pickup day. I think we towed a lot of vehicles that were junked, abandoned, parked in the street. Mr. DuPont remembers that. Dozens of letters were sent out, and it was an ongoing initiative. But it was something that we could say that, can we model a program like this? And I think that was our first, you know, glimpse into that. Going back to the CDBG, we looked at the whole area around the Globe Street Mill, the old Burlington plant. They called that the Globe Street Mill back in the day. And, you know, we denied it. I mean, we got denied. It was a very good application. They only limited the grant to infrastructure repair and replacement at the time. Our utility rates were too low. Our debt service was too high. The city had no planned investments for the area. And the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan, did not address utility line replacement and repair. That's why we were denied. I think they've since come up with different programs, and that's a piece of this, right? It's like if we could get free money by applying it and transform an area, I think that's the ultimate goal. So full circle on this approach would be maybe targeting a January, February pilot program. That's when the code enforcement cases kind of start dying. Usually the high grass, the junk and debris, the limbs and stuff in people's yards. But that slower time to look at an area, and we have heat maps. There's a heat map in your packet that shows where we get the most complaints from. And those are probably pretty good areas to look at. But have like a neighborhood meeting approach where you would have a variety of departments that could be available to answer, and maybe the police department's there, to answer some sensitive complaints that maybe somebody doesn't want to reveal in a public meeting. You know, maybe there's some alleged activity that they're concerned with. We get involved in those cases as well because it's a two-phase approach. Typically, if we could solve a minimum housing case where somebody may not even be living in the house but squatting in the house, that's a form of helping the police department. They've been a great partner with code enforcement, helping reduce the crime in the area as well. But looking really to maybe first a year targeting, and we can continue this dialogue. Weekly updates, you know, we have a pretty robust weekly update every week, looking at areas where we're seeing the most activity and coming up with a multi-phase approach on dealing with this. I think one of the biggest complaints we get in terms of investment is the lack of sidewalks in the older part of towns, because these were all state roads, you know, when it was Catawba Heights, and the state didn't build sidewalks. And so a lot of folks are looking for opportunities to walk, to make their neighborhood safer and more walkable. I think that's the biggest thing outside code enforcement complaints that we've received. So just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
Any other questions on this subject for Mr. Bill? Mr. Meadows?
So this was a concept that I had put on the agenda item, and we've begun discussions around it. There are cities that have entire departments built around this concept where they actually have staff members and all of that, and they have grants and they have money thrown at it. That was not necessarily what I was kind of trying to target here. It was a little lower level of intensity, but no less impactful, in that if we pick a couple of areas that we have the heat map where there's been challenges or troubles, and go in with all of our city services at the same time. You know, because if you do a bulk pickup, that's great. You know, if you do code enforcement and you target cars and tow them, and that's great. You know, if we had, you know, public safety there, we did some knock and talks because you might know something going on there and you have a presence, that's great. Other public safety, fire going through and maybe changing out batteries or changing out, that's all wonderful on its own.
Yeah.
But when you take that all into an area at one time, you know, and you have a period of time that you're focusing on that, I think that we're doing all those things anyway. So the idea was really low level here, was just to start with, could we coordinate all those things in an area at one time? You know, and there's probably more here. I've also seen United Way as example, or Bank of America or Wells Fargo. I think we have a lot of those kinds of connections in the community where they do work days. And if you had a place where you come through, there's some landscaping that needs to be done. You can't see the sidewalk. Somebody can go in and clean that up. You have, you know, a ramp. I know a lot of the churches do ramps. The other nonprofits do that kind of thing. So if we were able to kind of do an assessment in an area, kind of figure out what we do, go visit some of our churches, some of our nonprofits, target an area, go in and at least make, you know, a concerted effort. I've used the corridor at 273 is, you imagine if with all of the, I mean, I see some things along that corridor, you know, the outdoor furniture on the front porch, things like that, that maybe it's out there because nobody's been able to carry it off, not because they are making a fashion statement, but yeah, those kinds of things can matter. So as you went through and did that corridor, I know there's stormwater that went on at the same time as the road, as the sidewalk, you know, as the repaving, all of that happens in a corridor all at one time. All that stuff was going to happen, but you coordinate it and suddenly you have a different feel or a different look in an area. That's kind of what I was driving towards.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll go into new business now. Discussion of annexation policy and related design guidelines. Mr. Bill?
Thank you, Mayor. This is something that we've heard various planning commission members, various council members and mayor. What's going on in the development world largely has to do with water and sewer capacity in various areas, and mainly wastewater treatment plant capacity, because that gets really expensive. It's gotten really expensive, as we know, and some of the past decisions made were for future growth. And you go back to the plan Mount Holly, it says we need well-balanced, well-thought-out growth, not to grow for the sake of growing, which has its own detrimental impacts. What we're seeing now is with University City, with Huntersville, Cornelius, Davidson, Cabarrus County, Union County, limiting capacity and basically not approving any new projects because of wastewater treatment plant capacity. And our markets change. We're seeing a ton of developers look over this way. And one thing about establishing, these are related to this recent discussion on the commercial corridors and creating commercial corridors. I have developers call me every week looking to take business property and rezone it to residential, you know, because they're just trying to find land. And, you know, that's never a good practice to take commercial. We only have a limited amount. And so we're seeing a lot of pressure on staff, but we are getting pulled left and right. And it's going back to, I wanted to provide y'all with some talking points. There's a ton of information. Tried to make it heading oriented in your packet, but to keep us on track, prior to 2006, we started the strategic vision plan. Mayor Witt at the time met someone named Deb Ryan. She was a professor at UNC Charlotte and the Urban Institute. She just recently retired, actually, but met her, asked to do a proposal, and council bought into this. And this was all about the strategic vision plan of 2008. It's 2008 because it was adopted in 08. It began in the summer of 2006. So prior to the plan, there was little effort, you know, from the building industry to focus on architectural components of homes. We were inundated by snout houses, really the lowest grade residential vinyl siding you can get, which, as you can see from this picture, it warps in the heat. It's hard to maintain. You know, these snout houses prevented people from actually parking. Typically, there's people that don't park in their garage. You know, they use their garage for storage, but they would park over the sidewalk, and you had this really good garage-dominated streetscape. There was also a lot of clear cutting going on, and no landscaping enhancements after the fact. When we know that some of these properties are hilly and you need to grade them out, but bringing them back and doing these additional plantings, that was just lacking. And so in the summer of 2006, and you see examples of these garage-dominated streetscapes and these snout houses, so to speak. These are not in Mount Holly. These are other parts of the country. But essentially, we were inundated by that type of development. So we embarked on this vision plan, and that was based on the 2003 vision process. You had a citizen-driven plan. You needed to put it on paper, because in 2003, it was just like greenways, green connections. We want a great Main Street. We would like to have a restaurant on the water. We'd like to have some event space. Those were the main components of the plan. Now, the vision plan in 08 put those goals on paper. So basically, it was a $120,000 project. We used that project to gain $2.4 million in grant money because we had a plan, a master plan. A lot of these grants require you to have a master plan. So this is a 5-phase plan. The first phase was we need help on design guidelines for voluntary residential annexation. And a lot has changed at the state level. I tell you, I am so shocked that all these bills get proposed, but one thing hasn't changed. You get to decide on what you annex and what you don't. You don't have to satisfy any developer's wants and needs and desires. You make the decision based on what's best for Mount Holly. We have been really restricted in terms of if it's inside the city limits, if it matched your land use plan, but you didn't like the style of house, too bad, because the rules have changed now for inside city limits. But annexations, we still right now get to have say on that. So the design guidelines were adopted in 2006. There were 61 goals in the plan. We accomplished 49. Others are partial, are in progress. But a lot of this had to do with upping our standards, because our standards weren't very good at the time. And I say that from landscaping, usable open space, requiring like really great neighborhoods instead of just subdivisions, because anybody can build a subdivision, but it takes thought, a lot of forethought and design to do a neighborhood. In April 2007, we were one of the first towns in the entire region to get rid of this stringent quasi-judicial process with sworn testimony. It didn't encourage public participation, and we adopted conditional district rezonings that go along with the annexation. That's where you place conditions on that development. So, the last paragraph in the design guidelines read, negotiations would be allowed if in the form of a quid pro quo. One guideline being lessened and another one strengthened. That has been put in practice by the city, but in 2008, we were ready to go. We adopted this great plan, and then the recession hit. And we went from issuing about 300 permits for new homes, because 2005 was a big growth period in Mount Holly, to 80 the next year in 2008. So basically, imagery was the first test of the design guidelines. Quid pro quo, you saw a lot of areas strengthened in the form of a ton of usable amenities. Maybe cut back on some things, but those are very sound. Instead of the 24-inch crawl space, they go down to a 12-inch. It's got a brick wrap. It was a very attractive home. They got some architectural enhancements on the garages. So that was approved in May 2017. What we learned from imagery is we need an ordinance to mitigate traffic. So we were one of the first towns to adopt a TIA in November 2017, and that requires every developer that has 1,000 trips per day. Now the DOT standard is 3,000 trips per day to mitigate their traffic impacts. They pay for it. They have to pay for the cost of development anyway, but they have to look out in years past the development to make sure that they're mitigating the traffic from that particular development. 2020 land use plan came along, and it was adopted on June 8, 2020, and it said, hey, these design guidelines are great. A lot of towns didn't have them. And with the General Assembly gutting the powers of local government through rezonings and zonings, you had this quid pro quo process. Now the future land use map really follows this R8, 8,000 square foot lot minimum standard. And that's 5.4 dwelling units per acre. A lot of the plan now is a guide. It says that 4 to 6 dwelling units per acre. Now some folks think that's too many. We're seeing proposals because the land's not type A land anymore. It's got some topo challenges, some floodplain. We're seeing 2 dwelling units per acre. It's more concentrated development because they got a lot of land they can't develop. We also initiated a cost-benefit analysis. We're the only town in the entire Charlotte region and possibly the state that is doing a cost-benefit analysis to make sure that the city's not subsidizing development. You saw that with Green Meadows to golf course. You saw us do substantial work. The cost to serve was really high. It was 1.2 miles from the contiguous city limits, 0.7 of a mile from Westland Farm, which is a satellite annexation. And the number said this is not a good idea, based on the proposal at the time, to proceed with this. And council said, hey, the numbers are here, we're not going to proceed. And so that that's an extra thing that we do to our process, an extra, I guess, quiver, arrow in our quiver, so to speak, that we've added to this whole annexation review process. So just based on feedback, and this list is not all inclusive. Council may have more. I've heard this directly from council members, the mayor, planning board members. We're seeing negotiations are not always in the form of quid pro quo. We're seeing, we'd love to do front porches on all homes. We're going to do 50%, but we got a lot of open space. Well, that open space is floodplain or undevelopable land, so eliminate the environmental offerings for architectural standard relief. And we've relayed that to developers. Look towards architectural enhancements on all sides, not just the front of the home. I'll give you several examples where they'll add brick or something that maybe not look great. It would look better if the whole home was thawed out, There's other towns that have that approach. Mandated we got burned a couple times on roof overhangs, where most homes do have like a 12-inch roof overhang. And we had one builder tie the side of the home into the roof line, and it made for a very boxy look. Brick or masonry homes is standard. That's the most we get pushback. You know, I bring that up to every developer, and it's too expensive. The market doesn't want it. We just don't build that way. But, you know, that's something to very strongly consider. Minimum home size. You know, we always had the standard of a 1,600 square feet per ranch, a one-story, single-story, and that's heated, 2,000 square feet for two-story. That's been approved in several developments. Varying home size to lot options. Talk about a particular footprint. If you have this, maybe add more density, the bigger the home. Maybe you give some density to a developer. Usable open space, excluding floodplain or topography challenged areas. Parkland or school pad, as well as the payment in lieu option. And we do have some of that adopted in our subdivision ordinance now. Back in '06, you know, we've redone the open space requirement a couple times. So it's definitely strengthened. There's money of lieu options included in that. Now, from the school system, anytime you presented with a plan, even 200-300 homes, roads and schools are going to be brought up at the public hearing. So we got a traffic impact analysis. They have to use our traffic engineer. They can't use their own, because there's a level of trust there. And we have scoping meetings, well thought out, and they put their seal on that plan and coordinate with NCDOT, the Gaston, Cleveland, Lincoln MPO. Our school system, we require developers to reach out to our school system to make sure they can handle additional kids. We would like to work on something at the staff level where it would actually generate a school impact number and work with the school system on that, you know, to make sure that we can have those answers at the public hearing. Increased minimum landscape requirements. We don't need a row of Leland cypress. We need buffers that are in our ordinance now, type A, type B, type C buffers with a variety of attractive native plants. And the zoning ordinance has been updated. Walking trails, greenway connections, we're continuing to see that as a common practice. We had some developers recently clearing grub, so they're just mulching the trees they're taking down. That's our greenway. No, sir. We require a minimum 8-foot wide greenway. It's got to be compacted gravel. It's got to meet our emergency marking requirements. We get our police and fire involved in that. They've been a great partner in all this as well. But there's opportunities that require, you know, paved asphalt in the main sections as well. Update the design scoring matrix. We do have a design scoring matrix that it ranks. The biggest problem sometimes we see, they score themselves 102, so they're at like A+, and we score them 86. And we show them, like, and go back and forth with that. But there's, you know, we can mandate some items in that. Update cost benefit analysis. Paul Lowe and I have a meeting with Raftellus in the morning to finalize that. But they've looked at it. You know, we wanted, there was some money in the budget this year to study that. And they were blown away by our process. They said they've never seen a town do that level of detail on the annexation proposal. So kudos to you all for adopting that. Shorten the annexation review period. I think that's the biggest hurdle right now. You get like half dozen reviews. People aren't addressing comments, and it's just wearing staff down. And we hear certain names and we just cringe because we've given clear direction on those projects for not months, years. And at some point, you know, 2 review periods should be enough for anybody. Maybe 3 if there's minor items, but that would certainly free valuable staff time to focus on other things. And update the annexation policy to reflect that after a certain period of time being static, because we've got projects that just been sitting there with no correspondence, no updates. If it's static for 6 months, you have to resubmit and start all over. That would include paying the additional fees. Those are just not, you know, some feedback that we've gained, but we'd like to change this document at council's direction to have more mandated structure, a lot of pictures on what to do and what not to do. And I think that will help our process tremendously as we get faced with these new annexation petitions.
Any questions from council for Mr. Beal? Mr. Meadows?
Some of this is gonna be on the soapbox, I'm sorry, but we're looking for quality over quantity. And it's not our responsibility to make developers money. So, you know, I'm fine with them making money, but, you know, they need to move at our pace, not theirs. You know, they can come in here with their hair on fire. It's not our responsibility to jump up and down and meet whatever standards they've had. Yeah, so we move at our pace, not theirs. We need to raise our standards for outside the city limits. I think you've captured a lot of them. I've got a few that I'll highlight. And say, this is kind of what you're gonna do, or don't come here. You know, we have a standard, you're gonna meet the standard, or don't bring your development forward. You know, I think I'm okay with that, and I think we've had an attitude here of, we want high standard, we want quality, we want it to last, because I'm looking at what it's gonna look like 20 years from now, and if I look at some of our subdivisions, they haven't aged as well as they could have. You know, had they had just minor adjustments, which we've been learning along the way. You know, and I want to slow it down and reset the expectations. You know, we have had a higher quality developer showing up as of late, and a lot of what we're asking is what they do anyway. So if you can't meet the standards, you know, okay, go somewhere else. You know, I know that we need to balance private property rights, but we're not inside the city. If you're inside the city and you have infill, you know, you have existing zoning, you have certain property rights, and your standards are very different than what it is to come in. If you want to come in and get a precious resource that we don't have a lot of capacity on, then, you know, you're going to meet the standards are going to go away. And for me, the highlights are, I'd like to see us revise the minimum standards and adjust the scoring matrix. You know, so, and maybe look at, you know, just be hard to do, but decide what do we think is more valuable. You know, brick is the one I always ask for. Start with brick and then we can pull back. Well, you know, if you do brick, you get, you know, 10 points. If you do the hardy plank, you only get 6 points. You know, and you rank order those, so I don't get to trade, you know, brick for, oh, well, I'll split the garage doors and put handles on it. You know, there's got to be kind of an even trade for what I'm actually giving up to what I'm actually gaining. And we started doing some of that, but I don't think we've gone quite far enough on that front. I'd like to see a table set that the bigger you come in, and what I would encourage staff to go look at is, the reason I keep raising schools is there's actually a statute that says you've got X amount of land that you can convey to the school board for like $1. You know, there's actually, we haven't used it much on this side of the river, but, you know, between your county and your city, there's an ability to trade on kind of time, and I'll talk to you more about it later offline. But so that's why I've looked at that, and we've had success where I think it was at River Park where they came in, they pulled property out of the floodplain, so they are environmentally responsive. But what we did on the staff side, and I was on planning commission, I think at the time then, is we said, okay, we don't know what the market's going to be when you get to your final phase. Nor did they. They actually had, I think, townhomes that were allowed in that space.
Yeah, it was like townhome or 40-foot wide single family.
And they went with what they had been doing because they were having a lot of success. So there is some flexibility we can build in, and maybe you ask for a school pad or a park pad, it doesn't work. You know, and you might be able to give it back to them and have them do another, you know, housing development option. We've done that in other situations. I'd love to see us explore doing that, but I'd like to see a table. If I bring in 300 acres, you know, there should be an expectation that you're going to give us X. I don't know what X is, but, you know, you guys have visited down in Lake Wiley, Field Day Park. I think that's 40 acres. It was given to them by the developer, and it's featured in all of their marketing material as they sell their products. So, you know, they want to have those kind of amenities, and we want to see them come. So those trades in the private sector are not uncommon. I'd like to see us ask for that. And then the minimum lot size is a tricky one, you know, but I think you can work on that to kind of weigh that environmental, like you're already talking about. You know, what is the market and what is the housing size that goes on various size lots. I think you can gain some success there. And I think in combination, we already have a high standard in the slow development. Yeah. And I think we can slow it down even more, which I think is desired. You know, so by using a death by 1,000 cuts to a developer, having been on the other side, but it sets a standard here that you have to meet, or we're just not going to waste time on it. It's kind of where I'm at. So,
yeah,
sorry, I took a lot of license there.
We're starting to see like development go 40 by 100 lot width, you know, 40-foot lot widths. And our concern is you add the setbacks in the garage, doesn't make for it looks like a garage apartment at that point. And y'all have seen some that y'all turned down that were 42 foot wide. And that was concerning. So, you know, some other towns have said anything under 55 or 60 feet wide, you have to do an alley loaded garage in the back, which allows a more attractive home up front. You know, the garage is in the back, it's not seen. But other towns have utilized that standard as well.
And I agree, I think we need to look at much more on the quality side than the quantity. You know, the density, you know, when you've got 4 to 6 houses on 1 acre, that's just kind of pushing it, in my opinion. We need to look at that, but we've just got to do our best. When we go in and do a neighborhood, it's a one-shot deal. So we want the best neighborhood, the best quality that we can get. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Beal? Yes, ma'am.
Can I just say, thank you for being so proactive.
Thank you. Yeah.
I know that you probably get pushed a lot, but, but no, I mean, ever since I've been a part of the planning commission, everything, like you guys have been so proactive and putting these plans in place and putting these guidelines in place. And like in the 20 years that I've lived here, like the difference is night and day, and the difference there. And I know that it's just going to continue to get better. So
Thank you.
And I'm sure there's municipalities that have called our staff and said, we want to do what you're doing,
There's a lot.
numerous times.
Yeah.
I think they're setting the bar.
Right.
I think they're creating, you know, they're setting a bar really high. And I think makes it easy to be proud. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So that concept of density keeps coming up. I think what we should have in our code to make this kind of clear is that you got the 4 corners of the property, and you have a gross density, then you have a net density. And I think a lot of times there's a lot of focus on the net density and not necessarily taking into account the floodplain that is preserved or the topo areas that aren't being there, that aren't going to be disturbed. And, you know, as I recall on these, what we have done is made those non-disturbance areas. So, you know, there are some environmental gains that we get while, you know, what looks like the development, if you know the actual property boundaries, what you have is actually not what it appears to be. So I think having, you know, that documented, so if you go look it up and you can understand, and maybe we require that as part of what they put in, it's not that hard to calculate.
No.
You know, here's our gross density, here's our net density, and start having a conversation around that so we understand what we're looking at. Because I would agree, if I had a relatively flat property, 4 corners, and I put in, you have 5 per acre, you're multifamily at that point. Yeah, single family doesn't function well there, but I don't think we're seeing a lot of that. I think we're seeing more of the 4 corners, and you're having kind of a section that's the highest, best use area for their layout, and a lot of it is being left alone, untouched, or had put the trails, the active space, I think is what we're seeing from a practical standpoint.
Anything else for Mr. Beal? Thank you, sir.
Great job.
Appreciate it. All right. We're going to number 2 on new business, discussion of employee benefits and incentives for the fiscal year 24-25. Mr. Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, tonight before you, we have several different options as it pertains to employee benefits and incentives. If you will recall, the recently adopted budget had originally was presented with a 3.1% cost of living adjustment to be allocated on July 1st. The proposed originally, the budget that was originally presented had up to a 5% merit increase that would be distributed mid-year after performance evaluation, and a longevity plan that had a $500 base multiplied by years of service that would be distributed in November up to $1,000. There was a lot of discussion at the May 20th council meeting regarding how we were going to be administering our COLA program. Council gave direction to come up with some options, some unique out-of-the-box solutions on moving forward with the COLA merit program and the bonus plan. So the numbers themselves, as I stated last month, would not have changed. We have 8.1% salary adjustments with specific amounts to be determined tonight, or with direction given to staff to bring back additional options. And in the adopted budget, there is $140,000 in longevity pay for 200 eligible employees. So that's background about what we were originally looking at, and then direction that came out of the May 20th meeting of the City Council. So I have several options for council's consideration this evening. We can certainly talk about each one of them. We can tweak, revise, or come up with additional unique options based on the council's preference. One option would provide for a 2.1% cost of living adjustment. This would be distributed to all employees on July 1, up to 5% merit, which is what we've been talking about all along, evaluating mid-fiscal year, and then distributing that based on performance evaluations of each employee. This plan distributes longevity and proposes a new bonus plan being implemented. So I want to talk a bit about that. I know we had a lot of discussion about that at the May 20th meeting, what that would look like, and give some examples for council's consideration and for the public to view tonight. This bonus plan would be funded with the 1% cost of living adjustment that has been deducted from the 3.1% that was originally proposed. So we had 3.1. This would be 2.1. That 1% would yield an up to $700 per year or per employee bonus that would be evaluated in November. So I want to talk a bit about that revised longevity bonus plan, how that would look, what it would look like going forward. So beginning in July, any amount of longevity pay that an employee would be eligible for would be added to their base salary, and that base salary would increase, and that would stay with the employee going forward in the future. Future salary increases and retirement contributions would be based on that higher income, that being the longevity pay that the employee would be receiving in their base pay. Employee continues to be eligible for a performance measure driven bonus plan, which depending on funding could be more than what the employee would be eligible for under the previous longevity plan. The bonus plan could be limited to anything. We intentionally want it to be low-hanging fruit in order to ensure that the employee is able to achieve that bonus plan, whether it's based on safety, based on attendance, any number of different things to ensure that they are eligible for that bonus plan in November. So that's an overview of the revised longevity plan and what a revised bonus plan could potentially look like based on the discretion of council. But I want to use a real-life example. This is based on an employee who has a base salary of $45,000 currently. Under this proposed plan or this option, the employee is eligible for a $1,000 longevity payment. So employee's been with the city for a while. They're eligible for up to a $1,000 longevity payment in November. So the revised longevity plan and bonus plan would take that $1,000, it would roll that into the employee's base salary. So beginning on July 1st, the employee's base salary would be increased to $46,000. In November, the employee could be eligible for a one-time bonus of $1,000. That would be something that's based to performance measure, whether it's attendance, safety, any number of things that we could put into place. Mid-year, that employee is evaluated. Under this hypothetical, the employee receives a 3% merit increase. That was around the average for the amount of merit pay that employees received this year. The average was right at 3%. So that increases the employee's base salary to $47,380. So the employee would earn more under this plan than what they would have previously earned under the current longevity plan. Future salary adjustments, of course, would be based on that higher salary amount and retirement contributions and the like, going towards a higher base salary. So that would be an example of how that particular option would play out. A second option is combining our merit and COLA program, our longevity being distributed as I just described, and that bonus plan being implemented. So COLA and merit would be combined under this option, and employee who ranks an average score after performance evaluation would receive a minimum of a 3% increase, that being what COLA is for this fiscal year. It would be based on what the budget would be and a to-be-determined amount year to year, what that would look like based on the budgeting process. The merit would be driven by the budgeted amount for the merit program and would be based on the employee's performance evaluation and the percentage of each employee and each rank. Changes under this option would be longevity pay would also be added to the base salary, and a performance measure driven bonus plan would be put into effect. And then, of course, council would need to fund what amount that bonus plan would look like in November. So under this option, merit COLA is combined. The floor of an employee that's meeting expectations after performance evaluation would be similar to the COLA amount for this fiscal year, and then a to-be-determined amount based on the budget in future and subsequent fiscal years. Option 3 would be identical to what we've done this year, that being a 3% COLA up to 5% merit. Longevity remains the same and no bonus plan is put into effect. under this, employees would be making less than their base pay, and no additional bonus plan would be implemented, but the longevity plan would stay the same. Cost of living would be 3.1% effective July 1st, and then employees would be eligible for an up to 5% merit increase after performance evaluation. This is identical to what was undertaken in the current fiscal year. Council talked a lot at the May 20th about an employee questionnaire. I wanted to bring that topic back up for council's consideration. I put together some just draft questions for your review if this is something you all would like to evaluate moving forward, such as, are you familiar with the city's longevity program? How do you feel about it? Would you be open to a revised program, taking each employee, using their salary, and showing how they would individually be affected by any type of change with longevity being rolled into base pay? Any suggestions or preferences for a bonus plan, and then just any other feedback that the employee would like to give. So all of this goes towards, I'm sorry, Council. All of this goes towards developing a pay philosophy, which is something that we've hinted at over the past few months coming out of the May 1st retreat, which goes to a lot of important questions, right? Do we want to merge merit with cost of living adjustments? What would that transition look like? Longevity ending, is that something we want to put into effect so that employees make more and then they're eligible for additional bonus plans moving forward? How that bonus plan would be implemented and how it would be compared to the organizational goals, and what type of metrics are put into place to ensure that we're able to make that obtainable, because we certainly want our employees to succeed, certainly want them to be able to be eligible for that bonus. Do we want to look at retention bonuses on department by department cases? Do we want to look at minimum salaries for department and how we're being competitive in the marketplace? Do we want to lead the market? Do we want to be at market rate? Do we want to look at merit standards and formulas for percentages of budgeted totals? So a lot of different factors to take into considerations as we move forward with looking at a pay philosophy, but wanted to bring these options for council's consideration tonight. I'm glad to implement any of the above options, tweak them, amend them based on feedback from council, or start from scratch and come up with some additional ways to evaluate performance and to allocate cost of living adjustments, execute merit, and look at additional bonus plans. So certainly open for any questions, direction, or discussion that council may have tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, questions? Anyone? Yes, sir, Mr. Reeves.
The last thing, the market analysis with different markets in our area. I think that's one thing we need to seriously look at with our individual departments. I've done some research myself with looking at salaries, starting salaries from places. I called a friend of mine, talked to him. I think we need to look at the market that we're in. From what I understand, some of our departments, like street and solid waste, they're under some of what's going on in our area as far as pay. So as we move forward, before we really start digging into some of this other stuff, we need to make that adjustment first and see where we're at as far as the market, because some of these people, might not even be making $15, $16 an hour. I don't know. I don't have the numbers. But in the market, you see all the time, and I'm going to use some of our local manufacturers. They're starting out above $20 an hour. So we kind of need to look at our market a little bit, I think. So.
Ms. Shoemaker?
Mr. Blanton, can you correct me if I'm wrong, but does that sort of is encompassed in the biannual rate study, or salary study, correct? Do not evaluate that, not necessarily with local manufacturing companies, but with other like-sized municipalities, is that right?
One of the things that I certainly review when we're going forward with the budgeting process is the League of Municipalities annual salary, where we rank with other cities and towns our size, and that's certainly taken into consideration when we're looking at some of the proposed increases and some of the adjustments that were made. You guys did an excellent job working with a consultant to make substantial salary adjustments over the past year based on the findings that Ms. Overcash presented and some of the adjustments that were made on an employee-by-employee basis. So yes, ma'am, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, that would be something that would be taken into consideration each year when evaluating the budgetary process.
Mr. Meadows?
Do you mind going to the pay philosophy slide?
Sure.
So as you go through those, I just want to make a couple points, make sure that you agree. So anything that we do for the employees can be retro to July 1. So if we haven't made a decision by July 1, it can be kind of retro back to July 1, right?
That's great.
So, and I think our staff has got some ways of doing that where you don't get crushed on the taxes. They can run separate checks, that kind of thing. So I just want to make sure that our staff understands that whatever we embrace, you're not losing anything if it's not done by July 1. I'm hopeful maybe we can get there by July 1, but if we can't, I just want them to know that. On the longevity piece, is that subject to budget allocation each year,
The longevity piece or revised bonus plan?
the longevity piece?
Right, it would have to be approved through the budgetary process each year.
So if we go to a bonus program that's subject to the same deal, so you're not at any greater risk of receiving that or not than you were before? Either it's in the budget and you were gonna get something, or it wasn't in the budget and you're not gonna get anything, right?
Correct, it would be subject to the budgetary process each year, Councilman Young.
And there's a couple of things that have come out of this conversation that I think are pretty outstanding if we decide to go this way, is that this pay philosophy concept that you have introduced not only takes those market studies and, starts getting into general bonus program for the employee base as a whole. Love the idea of individual bonuses. I think I've seen a couple of things that you've written about how one might achieve that, those incentives that can be put in. We already have some retention programs within certain departments, so those can certainly be expanded to other departments. Where if you're about to lose somebody because they're gonna go someplace else for pay, we have the ability to evaluate that employee, make sure it's someone that you wanna keep and run through, that. So there's 3 or 4 things on this list that I think are beyond, what, this was me again, I'm sorry, but I raised a lot of this, but having the conversation and having different voices in the room has added things to the list that I think have even greater value, because our employees are what we do, providing service is what we do. So I think that there are some tweaks in the pay philosophy that can get us to a place to where our employees actually have a bigger take-home pay every week and can count on points in time where they'll get a bonus check as well, which we've done before. I think during COVID, we not only managed to get the compensation back to July 1, but we also did a one-time deal recognizing what a lot of our families outside of our employees were experiencing. A lot of people were not employed at home. No, the employee here might have been okay, but they weren't. So I just wanted to say that this conversation has been a fruitful one, and don't know what we're going to do today, but going forward, there's some ideas on the table that weren't even talked about before that I think are in the employees' best benefit. I'm all about educating folks and having them understand. So if staff were willing to embrace a educational and feedback program, I think that would have value. So people wouldn't be guessing about what's going on. They would know kind of what happens to me if I do X, Y, or Z. And then they can make an educated decision on what they want.
Mr. Craig?
Yeah, so that's the way I'm leaning with the questionnaire and also the educational piece. But also, for clarification purposes, option 1, is that if I went from 46,000 and got the $1,000, I go to 47,000, then I get potentially plus a bonus, could get a bonus that year as well?
Yes, sir, Councilman Craig. The longevity pay would be added to the base pay, and then there would be an additional bonus plan that would be implemented. So you would get your longevity pay rolled into the salary, and then an additional bonus plan that would be executed in November.
Ms. Harris?
I think we have to do the educational piece first before, we can't really decide. If we decide something tonight, we haven't let the employees say anything. So I want them to be able to have input, and maybe we stick with option 3 until we decide what's going to happen with the employees.
Ms. Shoemaker?
Yeah, I completely agree with Councilwoman Harris. I think we just kind of leave things as is. Let's educate on what we think we'd like to see, and like the 2 other possible options of like, here's what we could have this or this, or we could leave it the same, and let people give us feedback on what they'd like, because I don't think anyone up here, like, what we're interested in doing is rewarding our employees and retaining our employees, and if they don't understand and think that we're punishing them or taking something away from them, then we're doing the opposite of that. So
It's their money.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the biggest things is longevity, and they need to have a say-so in that, what they want to do and how they want to do it. It's like was just said, it's their money. Some of our departments, we need to look at minimum salaries.
Yep.
We just need to go up. We've got to retain our employees. We've got to take care of our employees. You can't hire one employee for one position and hire that same person 5 times because of money. We've got to get to where the market is. We've got to get to where we can retain our employees. We've got to do what's right by our employees. That's the bottom line.
In all
We
departments.
also have to be careful about compression and, respecting the salary and the
Well,
salary
sure,
study
but
and all that stuff.
We do, but, in the end, our employees are our most valuable asset, and everybody knows that. And we just gotta take care of it. That's all it is.
We have to, oh, go ahead.
No, you, Ms. Harris.
We have to look at all employees, no matter what they do. I mean, we have got to make sure that they're up to par and they're making the money they need to make. So that's my 2
Yeah, and
cents.
Mr. Reeves?
That's basically what I was trying to convey before, that we need to look at each individual department step by step and see, we want to make sure our employees have got a living wage. Because the market right now, for the sake of just putting a number out, it's $20 an hour. If we're below that, we need to adjust that. I'm like David, we need to fix that problem first.
Well, we've done right by the police, we've done right by
Exactly.
firefighters, and we've just gotta look at other departments, from here. Mr. Meadows?
So we've done a market study every other year that looks at that very thing. And one of the things that I have talked to several employees about that maybe needs to happen across the board is that our total compensation package needs to be understood. It needs to be talked about because there are unintended consequences from just throwing a dollar amount at a particular position. And I'm not for that personally. I'm good with the market, and I think there's some private sector marketing that is done with our market study, if I recall correctly, plus the League of, so it's not like we've done these without considering what others our size can afford, because there is a consequence, because it's not their money, it's the taxpayers' money, and, we don't do anything without taking money from somebody else. So we gotta be cognizant of that, and we need to be in line with the market on the whole, because if I make $20 an hour, but I don't have a retirement, I don't have any health care, I don't have my family covered, do I really have a better job somewhere else if I make $16 or $17 here? I would submit that you don't.
Ms. Shoemaker?
Yeah, and I agree with that also. Like, I'm a government employee, and if I was in private sector, I could be making probably quite a bit more money, but most people don't get like 5 weeks off. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many other things that, there's so many other perks, better health insurance, pensions, the amount of leave and holiday pay, like paid holidays, things like that. So it's difficult to compare all that, but I do think that, I think education is an important part here, but I think stepping outside of the regular, the salary study that we continue to do every other year, and then in between those salary studies, we're offsetting with cost of living increases, so, the employees are that there's consideration for the jobs that they do, right? So, I think it's a tough thing, but I do agree with what Councilman Meadows is saying about, it is taxpayer dollars, so we can't just say everyone gets $100,000 a year, wouldn't that be great? Everybody gets $100,000 a year.
I wouldn't be the mayor anymore.
Well, yeah.
And we wouldn't be on council anymore.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? It'd be really nice to set a dollar amount and say everyone gets at least $20 an hour or $25 an hour or whatever. But I think that we do have to respect the research and the time and the evidence that we're being fed back from the salary study that's done. And it's not like it was a salary study that was done 10 years ago and we're just assuming that it's still accurate. I mean, it's being done pretty much it's not even every 24 months. It seems like it's more frequent than that, so.
So good,
Mr. Meadows?
So one of the things that you can also do outside of making sure that your kind of base salaries and your pay ranges are right is if you're having a particular group that you're having trouble with, you could do retention bonuses for the people that you currently have. You can also do sign-on bonuses. If I make a certain period of time for this period of time that we're having trouble, there are some things that we can do. We're going to rely on staff to let us know where is that happening, why is that happening, how's it happening, because there's some other things that we can do to reward our current employees. So you run into compression, which is difficult, to get people to come on, but there's some things you can do for your current employees. Maybe you reward them with a couple of more days off than what others are getting. Maybe it's a paycheck. Maybe it's, a luncheon. I don't know, there's a number of different things that one can do to highlight, kind of areas that you're having trouble with. I've seen it done in other organizations where you're having hard to hire positions, or for some reason you're losing people and you've got to find ways to keep them. It doesn't always have to be base pay. Is what I'm getting at. There can be other programs that we can explore.
Anyone else? Mr. Craig?
I think it's also gonna boil down to communication, just from, like, I want department heads for the city to feel comfortable to come to us, talk to us about stuff. Don't keep everything tied up and bottled up on your shoulders. Come to us, talk to us about it, try to work through this, because I've seen it firsthand when I worked for the city of Mount Holly, and so I would like for people to talk to council and the mayor and try to get that figured out, to go above and beyond before it gets to leaving, because we can go into what Councilman Meadows was talking about and potentially give like some retention plans or some bonuses in that way.
Yeah, I think people want money in their pocket more than anything. You can have a dinner, you can have days off, but they just want more money in their pocket at the end of the day. So we need to give our city manager some kind of direction here. I know we talked about option 3 for the moment, and then we can tweak that or do something different. And if that's what you guys want to do, it's council's pleasure.
The survey and the educational piece.
That's what I said.
Added along
Do
with
the
that.
education, but for the time being, do
Stay where
option
we're at.
3. Stay where we are.
What Councilwoman Harris
So
said.
I'm gonna make that motion.
Education, survey.
That's a motion.
And that's moving forward with 3.1% cost of living adjustment effective July 1.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think you need a motion.
This is just.
Okay.
Consensus,
Right.
I think he's got the
Yeah.
idea. Okay, we've got 3 options.
So
We want
you've
to
got,
educate our employees.
you've got your direction.
We will proceed with releasing the survey. We will do an education piece, and we will ensure that effective July 1, there will be a 3.1% cost of living adjustment to all employees, revisiting the other issues after the survey results.
We'll talk about the minimum salaries later and the longevity, all that with the employees, right?
If that's the consensus of council.
That good?
Why are we doing the July 1 when we don't know what direction we're heading in?
Well, I think that's what you guys were talking about, just doing that until we can always change it. You mentioned about changing things up.
What I said is
After the
that we
vote.
need to find what direction we're going in, then we can make any raises retro to July 1. That doesn't mean you do anything on July 1 if we can't get to a decision before then. If we don't get till August, then you pay them back to July 1, and they get that check when we go through. It's what we did the last time we had COVID. We weren't sure what was gonna happen in the world. We rechecked it in December, and we went back to July 1, everybody got a pay increase. I'd like to keep pressing staff to move forward so we have a clear direction.
Okay,
Well, that's what I just said. Go with option 3 until we can do the education part, and then we can tweak everything.
It does, and I think that's what everybody agreed to, except maybe you, Mr. Meadows.
I don't think we agreed to that. I think we
Well-
agreed to educate the employees, get feedback, and then decide which direction we're going in.
We're gonna go back to that slide.
And option 3 changes nothing.
Right. That's what we said. Change nothing until we can do the education part.
So we can
So they can get
Get
paid
employee
July the
feedback.
1st.
I think that's poor methodology personally.
Well, that's your opinion.
Yep, I'm entitled to it.
So let's just ask individually, what do you wanna do, Mr. Reeves?
I say we go with 3 until we can have a survey from the employees and get their feelings.
All right.
That's important.
Ms. Harris?
Same.
Okay. Craig?
Yeah, just take a survey, educate, and keep everything the same, and then if something happens,
Adjust.
adjust.
Okay. Ms. Shoemaker?
I'm okay with option 3 until we can adjust moving forward.
Okay.
And I said my piece.
All right, so we're gonna go with option 3. So, Mr. Blanton, you have your direction.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so we're done with that. Moving on to the city manager report, Mr. Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Several things for the council and the public tonight. It's a very exciting time to be here in Mount Holly. We have a big firework event coming up this Thursday, 6 to 10. We're looking forward to having a band, food trucks, a lot of fun and fireworks. So certainly encourage the public to come out. Looking forward to a great Great night, staff. Public safety's done a wonderful job planning to ensure that we have everything lined up and that everyone will most importantly be safe. So certainly look forward to seeing everyone downtown later this week. On Friday at 2, the RFP for the Veterans Park expansion. The RFP is due 2 o'clock. We will be evaluating those proposals, updating council and the public on what proposals we received, leading to the Mount Holly Matters that was referenced last month. That's going to be Thursday, July 25th at 6:30 here at the Municipal Complex, where we will be discussing the issue of the Veterans Park expansion in great detail. We will be closed for Independence Day on Thursday, July 4th, so we certainly encourage everyone to enjoy time with your families, be safe, and enjoy the summer holiday. Lastly, I do want to take a point of personal privilege, Mr. Mayor. Over the last 6 months, I've had the pleasure of working with Mr. Danny Jackson. Council was generous enough to afford me the opportunity to work with Danny over the last 6 months, and it has been of tremendous value to me. His contract with the city as a consultant will be expiring on June the 30th, so this is his last official council meeting as a consultant, and I certainly want to thank the council first and foremost for allowing Danny to stay on during this transition, and certainly thank you to Danny for being a wonderful mentor, wonderful friend, and the epitome of what it means to be a public servant to the people of Mount Holly. So thank you, Danny.
And Mr. Jackson, down the road, you may get another phone call, so just be ready.
He says, I'm tired of getting those.
All right. Okay, so we're going to go in our closed session pursuant North Carolina GS 143, 318, 11A, 3 and 5. So I need a motion to go into closed session. Ms. Shoemaker, second by Mr. Reeves. We are now in closed session.
Can we go to the bathroom?
Yes, we can take a 3-minute break. 5-minute break.
Thank you.